This article just came out, and I like it because it's talking about the impacts of climate extremes, which are increasing heat waves, floods, droughts, wildfires, etc., and they are impacting food security. And for the Asia Pacific region, is kind of intimately tied climate vulnerabilities for South Asia, China, and yet the cooperations are not happening in terms of finding peace, climate action, regional cooperations for adaptation, mitigation, resilience building, etc. So can this idea that we are all in it together and climate extremes are increasing for all of us and we are all suffering from food security impacts, can this lead to some cooperation? Food security under climatic extremes in the Asia-Pacific region. Climate-related extreme events are exerting significant pressure on food security in the Asia-Pacific region, home to over half of the world's population. China, Thailand, Vietnam, and many Southeast Asian countries are major producers and exporters of food security. Exporters of food globally. Recent climatic extremes associated with El Nino have caused significant crop losses, etc. So taking action on climate adaptation, coordinated rules-based regional food aid mechanisms, protecting domestic production and conserving soils, advancing zero-carbon farming practices together, these strategies are necessary for future food security in the region. So it doesn't include South Asia, it's going from China into Southeast Asia, but the ideas should also work for India. So you can see that India during 2024 had extreme heat exceed 45 degrees and wheat decreased by 500 kilograms per hectare. Pakistan got hammered in terms of acres of cropland that were destroyed. Bangladesh, and this is numbers for Nepal are not there, but then you jump to China and Southeast Asia, including Japan. So if you can imagine that these countries can cooperate, the challenges for food security can be dealt with. China and India are now experiencing challenging uncertainty in food security due to climate change, coupled with less capacity to supplement or support domestic crop yields, leading to increasing food prices. Food consumption is also projected to increase rapidly for both countries with population and growing middle class. Others in the Asia-Pacific region from 2020 to 2020s to 2050s will also face similar increasing demands for food. Sustained yield, increasing sustained yield, etc. are nice, but if all the arable land is already being used and you have already exploited lots of the groundwater and rainfall is becoming extreme and fertilizers and soil health are not working so well together to increase the yields, then you better plan together how to manage the situation. China is currently heavily relying on overseas food imports of major crops, including from other nations that are concurrently suffering increased climatic extremes. So your dependence on other countries can become a severe liability when other countries are also facing climate hazards. For example, China imported over 900 million tons of soybeans, 42% from Brazil, worth 12.56 billion US dollars, 20.6 million tons of corn, and Myanmar and Brazil supplied that. China is the largest importer of rice globally, and of course Thailand and Myanmar are also supplying. Vietnam, they're all supplying to China. China also imported over 40% of its dairy products from New Zealand, which is projected to rise to 50% by the 2050s. So it's a big market for export. A lot of countries like Pakistan are, even India exports a lot of grains. And when an El Nino prediction comes, like this year in 2026, India clamps down on export and then prices jump in Indonesia and elsewhere where rice is being imported from India, or wheat, right? So the foci for future adaptation identified by this paper is that taking action on climate adaptations, data sharing mechanisms are needed. High distrust between the countries obviously has to be overcome to deal with real issues. Well-prepared practices, so preparation for climate extremes is multifaceted, ranging ranging from infrastructure development that is resilient to or protects people from hazardous weather to education programs to increase individual resilience when hazardous weather occurs. So you want weather resilient, climate resilient nations with data sharing. Using nature-based solutions, we have looked at these elsewhere. So agriculture, agroforestry, managed grazing, silvopasture, protecting the coast with mangroves to protect salinization of water and so on. There are many that go under nature-based solutions which help agriculture as well. Identification of stakeholders for effective operation. So obviously it's within the nation and international. Not all countries in the region can invest in early warnings, but India and China invest heavily. They can share. India does share with many countries and trains them, but this distrust between China and India has to somehow go away. Coordinated rules-based regional food aid mechanisms, beneficial food trade considering culture and belonging. So many of the world's top food importing countries are in the Asia-Pacific region, including China, Japan, and South Korea. Japan has very little land, eats a lot of meat, fish, and rice, and obviously has to import. Cultural, religious, and dietary factors have enabled India and Pakistan to be largely self-sufficient major crop production, even with their vast populations. Pakistan's status is further strengthened by its role as a net exporter of dairy, including fresh milk and cheese, but Pakistan faces heavy extreme rainfall. Every year it's been flooding since 2010, so its vulnerability to food production and heavy rain food security is growing rapidly. Food storage for climate extremes, obviously a great requirement for all of them. So Asia Pacific countries must pursue to secure food production and supply chains collectively. Their destinies are really tied together. This should be formalized through good collaborative partnerships and treaties designed to ensure regional food security. Cross-boundary food sharing system. Some of it happens during disasters, but it should be a regular feature. There are some agreement under ASEAN, etc., that work, and the effectiveness of these schemes can be significantly enhanced through co-partnerships with transboundary and international bodies like the Food and Agricultural Organization and United Nations Environmental Project, as well as NGOs such as Oxfam, World Vision, and so on, right? Promoting climate resilient agriculture, everybody needs this. Shifting to climate friendly diets, which, reducing meat consumption is going to be difficult for some cultures, but that has to be somehow brought in, at least in terms of how to produce meat with fewer resources like water and grains and land. Protect domestic production and conserve soils. We've talked a lot about soils and protecting homegrown food yields. Authorities will need to protect their soil from erosion and degradation. Obviously, soil health is degrading everywhere. Soil carbon is degrading everywhere, and some of the nature-based solutions like agroforestry actually enhance those things. Deliver future zero-carbon agricultural practice. This comes under also net zero. We have to, agriculture emits about 25% of the total emissions, so we must enhance the sinks of carbon in agricultural lands and reduce the sources of carbon as well. So to conclude, the AP region, Asia Pacific region, is critical to global food security, food production, and food trade under the rising challenges associated with climatic and non-climatic issues like the Ukraine-Russia war. Whilst India can be self-sufficient in homegrown food, China requires significant food imports from other countries due to differences in climate, environment, and socioeconomic factors across its vast land. It has a lot of land, doesn't mean all of it is arable. Many other Asia-Pacific countries are major food exporters, but also rely on imports of particular food items. As such, cooperation between nations will be essential for delivering food security in a future of much frequent and greater magnitude of climate extremes, plus human-induced factors such as growing populations and food demands, and of course there are conflicts and geopolitics of what each country is doing to the other in terms of protecting economic interests with proactive barriers. Okay, we identify 4 adaptation practices that AP region should undertake, which together represent collaborative partnerships between stakeholders to co-produce and co-deliver sustainable long-term solutions to climate risks to the agricultural sector. These are rooted in the use of advanced technologically innovative approaches and transparent data sharing in the AP region and globally, supported by the transboundary framework. So AP is not independent of the rest of the world, and protections for agriculture sector raises heckles in the US, for example. In the long term, AP countries should consider promoting more resilient food dietary changes. For example, shifting the diet to be a healthier, climate resilient diet to adaptively reduce the potential risk of food security from climatic extremes. For example, practices that include encouraging the reduction in food calorie consumption, not just meat but overall calories. In the short term, we urge governments to embrace, protect and conserve precious arable land through climate adaptation strategies and via global, regional and national legislative amendments, ensuring sustainable agriculture to guard future food security for over 4 billion people in the Asia-Pacific region. So I just ran through it because I wanted a placeholder for the region in terms of their combined vulnerability to climate change, climate extremes and food security, and how they can actually cooperate to deal with this together so that they don't exacerbate each other's vulnerabilities and food security issues, but enhance each other's climate resilience and weather readiness. Okay, it's a good idea. Let's see how it comes about.